Three, two, one. Welcome. We have a very special guest today. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a little about yourself. You have an awesome, you have a lot to share, and you're an expecting mother. Tell us.
Tell us. So I'm Andrea, and I've been married for 3 years. I'm 7 months pregnant. I've always competed in fitness and other sports my whole life, so being an athlete is a huge part of what I am. I'm also a Christian, so faith is super important to me. And we just started a new business for women. So it's fun to see your podcast, and then also be able to share kind of what we're up to here. And yeah, I got this huge old belly that weighs a ton right here in front of me on my lap.
Yeah, but you really can't even see. You're as beautiful as ever, or even more, I guess. You're glowing. That's what they say, right? When you're pregnant, you're glowing.
You're glowing. That is what they say.
So I know a little bit about your dating history with your now husband, and I think that it's very, very interesting. So tell us about that, because I think that nowadays with women, especially with social media and society in general, it almost seems like women are pushed into this. You have to be this sex symbol, sexy, and it's all about sex. And with your faith, and you were able to kind of go against the grain and do what you believe and stand strong in your beliefs. And both of you you stuck to it. You dated for a while. So tell us, because I think it's very important, because it's easy for young women to be just swayed and not stick to what they believe now.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure on, like you're saying, culture, but I also think that the pressure comes from the guys that are used to dating like that. Then they feel like maybe I'm not going to be worth it for them to pursue if we're not taking part in the hookup culture norms, So I think it's really tough, but it definitely puts it on the girl, because it's kind of like they're either saying yes or no, and I think they're afraid of saying no, kind of thing. But yeah, so a little bit of background about us: we met at basically a Christian retreat that also involves fitness as well. It's interesting because I came from the extreme fitness side, and he came from the church side, so we were both very different when we met, but we both really had an open-minded mindset about the other person's where they're at. And so it was pretty cool. I grew up in the church, and I wasn't as connected to it because it takes time, and I was so busy competing and traveling and teaching seminars in CrossFit and being in the CrossFit games and stuff like that. And he was super busy as well, but he just really cared about attending church and teaching Bible studies to younger men was his thing. When he was in college, he was mentoring some high schoolers, and then when he was 26, 27, when I met him, he was mentoring boys in college. So it's pretty cool to see how far we've come, because it seems like that was so long ago, but it definitely was my first relationship that I didn't feel pressured to jump into quickly, and I think it was really refreshing, because I just got to know him as a person, and I felt like he got to know me emotionally also, before anything was really attached, physically. So so we just really took it slow, and to us it made it kind of seemed faster because it was more intentional. It was oh, I really like this guy, and I think he really cares about me and keeps calling, and we're doing all this stuff together, and we're definitely making time for one another, and even kind of started planning our future pretty early. But for me, I've always been hopeless romantic, love stories, all that. So for me, I was just this seems like the real thing. I've never been treated like this, but it seems like this is what I've been hoping for. Could this be real? And so yeah, so that we just dated like that, and we did wait to have sex for marriage, and it was actually really fun because we only dated for probably a year before he asked my father for his blessing for him to ask me to marry him. But then it took him a really long time to actually ask me to marry him. It took him 6 months. I'm like, okay, my dad called me and told me that Pete had asked because I don't know why. He just, like, went against the grain. He's like, guess what? I'm like, okay, clearly this is your first time. That's not really normal that you would literally tell me this. But so then for 6 months, I'm like, what the heck? Did he change his mind? But yeah, we got engaged, and then 6 months later we were married. So we got married at the 2-year mark. And so 2 years is a long time to, like, I guess, abstain from that kind of stuff. But for us, we just kept thinking of it as a discipline. And it wasn't just a discipline for ourselves and for our future marriage, but it was a discipline to God. We were like, oh, this is going to be so good for us spiritually to just not be so distracted. And I think that can be a huge glue that distracts people from the big issues and the things that you kind of need to think through. Okay, could this really be a person that I want to do life with forever? And we kept thinking about, like, what marriage was about and reading books about what marriage was about. And, like, marriage really isn't about sex. I mean, you do have it, and that's great, and it's super fun. And, like, you know, doing that once we started, you know, we were married was really awesome. But it really was just helping us, you know, get set on the most important stuff and then go, well, we'll just put that down the road for later, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and that's, the problem is when that's a foundational piece of someone's marriage, it makes it really unhealthy. Like, you really have to have strong structure in your marriage.
Yeah, and then what about when you have kids and stuff like that? And it's like, how can that even be, you know, a main focus?
It's not it can't be a priority when you, like, you know, you got kids, you got a dog, you got this, you got that. It's really not a priority. And if it is in the beginning, how can you possibly convince your partner, oh, well, it's not a priority anymore?
Yeah, that's actually true. But, like, it is a big priority for people that are normally dating, especially in cities with a lot of young people. I think that's, like, what they think about when they think about romance. They think about experiencing each other like that. So it is really done, like what you said, against the grain. But yeah, we had lots of friends that dated like that too. So we asked a lot of questions, and we hung out with a lot of people that were like, yeah, you could do it. It's possible. Like, you could do it. And, you know, I really recommend it, you know, but they're like, you know, just people that we looked up to and wanted to, like, have marriages like them. Not like they had a perfect marriage by any means, but more like, okay, like, I want to have, like, a friendship. Like, I want to feel like this is my closest friend, and not just say it on Facebook when I post about it, because that's a very popular, thing to say as well. But it's like, I really want to feel like he likes me for me, and I really want to get to know him and make sure that, okay, is this the guy I want to be with for the next 60 years of my life? It's a huge decision. We'll be sharing every meal together that we can. That's like, if you can't stand each other, you need to figure that out real quick. And also, like, do you want to raise kids with this person? Do they have the same values, and do they have the same, foundation as you do? And even if all those answers are yes, there's still a point where you have to come to a conclusion of choosing them, and then once you choose them, like, I do really believe, like, that, like, marriage is forever. I really do think that's how, it was intended. And for me, I'm like, I just don't want to get into something that eventually I'm going to regret or need to get out of. Right. So it was like, okay, we're taking this really seriously, so it was a little intimidating, but now I think we've gotten through a lot of our hard stuff. The first 6 months of marriage was tough. Because
you guys also, you live separate. You only moved in together after you got married, right?
Yes. So we hadn't lived together either, which was a huge thing once we got married, going, oh, this is different. But you know what? It was actually beautiful that way, because for us personally, it was like, oh, we're, like, not playing house and then getting married and nothing changed. We really started playing house when we got married. That was, totally fun.
Big adjustment.
Yeah, it really was. And so we're at a good time now. I mean, we had, like, we will have had, like, 3 years of marriage before the baby comes, which was really, cool, because we met later in life. Mm-hmm. Where, some people, like, if they meet, like, way earlier in life, maybe they have, like, a lot longer, or maybe they have kids early. But, like, I'm 32 and having my first child. And, like, I think that's, like, okay, that's not how I ever thought it would go. I always thought I would get married earlier and start earlier, but this is how, this wasn't what I believe God's plan for, how it's supposed to turn out. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'm here for it. All right. Like, how many kids can I realistically have? It's like.
Well, and are you guys here, or did you guys leave? Where are you guys at?
We're in New York City.
Okay,
Yeah,
you are in the city, so I wasn't sure if because I know you're from out west. I don't know where he's from, but okay, so you're still here, and you have to be realistic about space and all this other stuff that comes with being in a city, like a small city.
yeah. And do you guys have a 2 bedroom?
We have a 2 bedroom.
Nice.
We actually just got a place upstate also. So that's, I think,
Okay.
because I'm from Michigan, so I am very much like I need a backyard, I need space. So thankfully we have that. That will just be, weekend getaway kind of thing. But even so, if we're crammed in here during the week, it's fine. We know we have somewhere with a little bit of space to kind of breathe at.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, yeah, having a 2 bedroom, even if we have another kid, like we have one little girl now, if we have another, whatever we have, they can share the room for a little bit and we'll just have to figure it out. But it's definitely a wild thing raising a kid in this city. I still can't imagine doing it, yet I'm doing it. It's New York City and there's just so much going on, especially now with COVID and quarantine. And how has your pregnancy been?
Well, so I'm like 29 weeks, so pretty far into it. I didn't realize that I was going to get to 29 and not really start counting the 30, 34, 35. A lot of the women now, they just start counting backwards. And they say, oh, we're 10 weeks out or like we're 9 weeks out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've gotten to the point now where like I'm counting to the days where I'm going to have to give birth to this thing. Oh my gosh. I'm like so intimidated by that. I'm like, I just hear so many stories and, they're real stories that, birth is painful and birth is scary.
What do you have? You plan to do at the hospital? You have midwife, a doctor?
We have a doula, but we are going to be at Lenox Hill Hospital.
Oh, that's where I delivered. Okay.
Okay. Did you like it?
It was impeccable. We didn't, I actually went in 3 times. So I went in, I ended up going to 41 weeks. So I was a week late, which is fine. I went in I was supposed to be induced on Sunday, which was a week after I was due. But on Friday or Thursday afternoon, Friday afternoon, I don't remember, my doctor called me and said, hey, how are you feeling? And at that point, I'd already been having contractions for about 18 hours. And they say, don't go, especially during that time, it was the middle of COVID. I didn't want to go in until my contractions were really close together. So when he called, my contractions were about 3.5 minutes apart. So I figured, okay, I'm going to go in soon. He called, I told him that, and he said, come in now. Because now, or at that time with the city, I'm on the west side. I'm basically directly across from Lenox Hill. So it took me like 5 minutes to get there, where now it could take 45 minutes depending on traffic. But it was very quick to get there. So I got there at around noon, but I wasn't dilated. I was only like a little tiny, maybe like barely dilated. So they said either we can induce you or you go home, suck up the pain a little bit more, come back when either your water breaks or your mucus plug comes out. Around 4, my mucus plug came out, and when that happens, you'll just know, like because I remember being like, what is that? Because, they explain it, but you don't really know. But when it happens, you'll know. That's the easiest way to put it. So I went back, and then my contractions had gotten further apart, but I was more dilated. So it was like the opposite of not the opposite, but you basically need both things to happen to go into labor. So they said, okay, we can either induce you or go back home. So I was like, I'm going to go back home. I don't want to be here more than I have to be. Then at 7 p.m., my doctor called and said, hey, come in. We're going to get this thing rolling. And I ended up going in, my water broke, and everything just flew. Like I was there by like 8:30 or 9, and then I had her at 1 a.m.
Wow, that's so fast.
Yeah, so I was having the contractions and was technically in labor for over 24 hours. But by the time I got to the hospital and for the final time, I had the delivery, and I didn't see one other patient. It was only nurses, only doctors. It was super empty, absolutely clean. They came in, they were on top of it. I don't know if you plan to breastfeed, but they show you I didn't think I would be able to, because my mom wasn't able to for any of us. She just wasn't producing. So I figured if I can, amazing. If I can't, but I did end up breastfeeding for the first few months. And they have a lactation specialist that will come around and answer questions. It was really I don't want to say easy process, but it was quick. It was, the staff there is incredible. Did you happen to meet your delivery doctor yet?
No.
No, I didn't meet mine either. I didn't even know it was a man. I thought it would be my OB, a woman. But come to find out, it was two guys that were on rotation, and I just got one of them, and he was fine.
Was it Dr. Stockham?
No, Dr. Stromer.
Oh, actually, that's going to be my they talked about those two men, Stockholm and Stromer, and yeah, that's going to be my delivery doctor. Yeah.
I'm very curious to hear what ends up happening, because Dr. Stromer he's an Orthodox. Well, I'm Jewish, and he's an Orthodox Jewish, like he's a religious guy. Like he comes in with his kippah, he has his tzitzit. It's very interesting.
Oh wow!
So I'm very curious to see what ends up happening with you. But they were very, very good. Like they knew everything that they said, because at one point they had to give everything is escaping me right now, but basically to help to induce you. And they're like, normally when this happens, the baby's heart rate will drop and we'll just have to flip you over on all fours. And that's exactly what happened. And it's really, I went into it with the mentality of it's basically my greatest competition, right? Like I've ran races, I've done, like you've competed in all sorts of different events. It's basically like that.
It's like, okay, you're at the starting line. It's
yeah.
Time.
Like be ready to roll with whatever comes your way. You're going to be amazing. It's totally, I would say order the Frida Mom kit if you haven't.
What's it called?
It's called Frida Mom, Frida Mom kit. And it has like ice, like these long ice packs that you can break and then you stick them in. They have like disposable underwear. They have perineal wipes. They have perineal foam. I'll send you a link, but I went through like 3 of those kits because I ended up having an episiotomy, but it literally saved me. Like I'm sure that I healed up very quickly. Basically, I think from when I had her till about 10 days, I was like, this is rough. But after 10 days, I was like, okay, I'm alive. I'm fine. This is fine.
Yeah, you pass the hard part.
Yeah.
Over the hill. Okay, it's downhill from here.
Yeah. And I mean, 10 days isn't that crazy because honestly, looking back at it now, it all just blurred together. I'm very curious to hear what happens after. So we definitely have to do a post interview.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, it's just intimidating for me because, like, my mom had 4 kids. Like, all of her brothers and sisters, my dad's brothers and sisters, they all had, like, 2 to 4 kids. So I'm, like, used to, like, being around the process of, child raising and whatever. Yeah, I'm from Denver, Colorado. So, yeah, they have lots of kids out there, lots of space, And so it is interesting, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be living in a totally different world than them. And I hope my mom comes out and is able to, like, be with me during the process of just taking care of the baby and just learning how to breastfeed and things like that are super intimidating for me as well. Mostly because you can't predict it, and I think CrossFit really prepared me well for that because you can't predict what the test is going to be, but you can just do your homework and you can train the way that you need to train based on who you are. And then, once you're ready for the test, it's like, you don't know what it's going to be, but you hope that you're ready. And so for us, like, we have a doula. She was one of my friends that was she spoke at our wedding. She's very sweet and just a longtime friend. So she became a doula 3 years ago, has delivered like, I think 10 babies, maybe.
Amazing.
So still pretty new in it, but definitely has kind of led us in. Have you ever heard of BirthFit?
Yeah.
BirthFit is, yeah. Did you use them at all, like as a resource?
I didn't, but I'm vaguely familiar.
Yeah.
I think I follow them.
Yeah. And so did I. And so she runs BirthFit New Jersey, and she teaches seminars out of there as basically a regional director. But she's very helpful. And I just was thinking, okay, it's like kind of like having a mentor as you go into it, and then a birthing coach for the moment. And I know they have nurses that, of course, will be the birthing coach, but for some reason it was special for me to like have someone that I knew there along with Pete and I, although like, family members and stuff like that aren't permitted to like be in there, during COVID. And so it'll just be, three of us. And she was telling me like, yeah, like, during labor, I mean, you go to the bathroom, you do all this stuff because you're pushing everything out. And she goes, we're about to be way closer than we already are. I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
Yes.
Wow, that's disgusting. So it's kind of like one of those things. I'm just like, you just can't be ready for it. But, I'm like, when people say, oh, like December 3rd, that's your due date. Like, that's great. I'm like, yeah, that's my death date. Like, I'm just literally treating it as like, not looking forward to that at all. Being pregnant is fun, But yeah, so life will go on, I'm sure.
Yeah, you're going to be amazing. There's zero question. You'll be fine.
Well, thank you for your confidence.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's a boy. We don't know what we're going to name it yet, but we call it Baby J. And we like the names James, Jay, and Jet. We like Jet.
Oh, that's so cute. Jet is very cute. I mean, they're all cute, but...
Our last name is so Montalvo. I mean, white people can't get it. I mean, my family's like, Montalvo? Like, I'm so close. It's like, you are so close, but... sound it out. Yeah, so I'm like, okay, we got to make it easy on this guy. Give him one syllable and sayable.
Jet, James, J. Easy.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so that's kind of the process for us with pregnancy. Pete's cracking me up, honestly, because not only does he not know this stuff, and I don't know a lot of it either, but I'm easier to remember it. He's like so freaked out by stuff, and then he's like, and he forgets instantly. And I'm like, remember, there's like, trying to teach him stuff, and I'm like, we went through the class and they were talking about certain things, and it's like so foreign to him. He's just like, all he knows is that I've gained 20 pounds, and I'm like really, every time I open, I'll open the refrigerator door and hit it closed with my stomach, and I'm like, how did that even happen?
Wham.
Yeah. And so it's adjusting for me, but it's like way more adjusting for him. He's just like, this is crazy.
It's wild too, because for us, I don't know what it is. Like, I have nieces and nephews, but I never felt so maternal. Like, I've always been into sports and athletics and, playing sports. But It really, once I had her, the maternal instinct just kicked on, and it comes so easily and so quick. And my husband, like, we both joke about it now, because he's like, I didn't know you had it in you. And I was like, I didn't either, but here it is. Like, and it's amazing. Like, it just comes so fast and easily, thankfully, for a woman. Like, it's within us.
Yeah, I met a girl on Facebook Marketplace the other day. I was like getting rid of like a bunch of random things, like sheets and a maternity pill that was extra that I didn't need, like random stuff. So she came and we like talked like friends. Like, we got each other, and she's like, you look so cute. She's like, don't you love being pregnant? And like, she was talking to me like she's my friend, and she had her kids with her, and she was like, I loved being pregnant, and she told me all the reasons why. And she's like, women are made to, like, our bodies are made to adapt.
Yep.
And make babies, birth babies, feed babies. She's like, isn't it incredible the way that, like, the way that it all like is planned, and it's so natural. And I was like, yeah, I couldn't agree more. But she just said it, and then she said, oh, well, since you live here in the city, do you guys have a car? And I'm like, yeah, we have a car. And she was like, oh, because we don't, and we never thought we really needed one, but we were waiting on a taxi on New Year's for hours, because all the New Year's, whatever, like, everybody needs taxi or Ubers or whatever. So they were waiting for hours, and she ended up having the baby outside her apartment.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, no way. And she's like, yeah, there's one. And she was carrying him, and she was like, I literally had him
on the ground
outside of my place. I'm like, you're kidding me. How are you even okay? She was like, I would have never ever wanted that for anybody, not myself. And she was like, I was fine. Like, then I went to the doctor like 3 hours after we had the baby, finally got a taxi.
What?
It was the awkward, crazy, ridiculous thing. And then by the time we got there, they clipped the cord and gave me, the baby, and I was able to breastfeed. She goes, it was so fine. And I'm like,
wow.
Please don't let that happen to me. I don't want to give it a responsibility. Oh my gosh. But extreme situation, I know. But I had to mention that.
That is wild. Well, and it just shows women, like, I mean, you know how to endure pain, like, from competing. Like, yes, this is a different type of pain, but
Yeah.
also and I spoke with my sister at one point, and she has two kids, whatever. And we didn't even discuss it, but we kept saying the same mantra. And only after we talked about it, she was like, yeah, I said that when I was having both my kids, which was, women go through this all the time. Like, I'm not the first woman to go through this. I'm not the last woman. This is what our bodies are made for. Like,
Right.
truly, this is what they're made for.
Yeah, exactly. So then did you work out throughout your pregnancy?
I did. The week 41, I got 1 or 2 workouts in, but I end up just going for really long walks, like 8 miles, 10 miles. I took my dog and we went through Central Park.
8 miles. Oh my
yeah,
God.
because that's what they say is, like, we have an assault bike, and I was on that also, thinking that will help with, like, inducing, because they also say if everything is, like, if you're having a healthy pregnancy, which you are, that sex helps a lot, help it, like, to induce something about softening the cervix. But it's like there's a bunch of things that you could do, and walking, for whatever reason, just plain old walking helps with it. So I was walking like 8 miles, 10 miles every single day, trying to induce for the week 41.
My God. What if you were going into labor 4 miles away from your house?
I know. I had my phone. One day I was on the phone with my grandma who lives in LA, and she had her first one at 15, because this is, a long time ago. And she was like, yeah, even if you feel like you're going to labor, you just keep walking, because you're not going to actually go into labor. Like, it's just going to help with the dilation and the contractions. And she's like, just keep walking. I'm like, she's like, no, it's fine. I've had 4 kids. I'm like, okay, grandma, thanks.
That's funny. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's crazy. But you're still working out. You have a few weeks. You're going to probably work out all the way to the end.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, we started a new fitness company for women, which has been really exciting, Pete and I. And it's ironic, right? Having a guy help you start a women's fitness company, but it's been really cool. But it's actually helped me, like, hold me accountable and stuff, because there are days when I don't want to work out because of time. Honestly, because the business takes so much time, but also, like, just not wanting to, just like feeling full or feeling big or feeling heavy or feeling like my knees hurt or my back hurts or something like that, where I'm like, oh, this is not going to go away even if I work out. But every time that I do, and I exercise, or maybe even get some weightlifting in and combine those two things together, it's like I feel better afterwards, So I always try to, like, convince myself, going, okay, lots of people work out during your pregnancy. You're not alone in this. Like, they make time. Obviously, you are, I make efficient workouts that take like less than 15 minutes, So it's like the timing thing isn't really, excuse me, like it's not really a valid excuse. And I know that, but it's just interesting when you're like, okay, physically, I don't feel like, I know push-ups are going to be hard. I know my dips are getting hard.
Everything's harder.
I feel heavy, and I feel like I can't jump or move or run as easy. So I'm like, that's the kind of stuff. And I realize it's actually just pride, because it's trying to, it's humbling myself. Like, it's like, wow, this is harder than it's ever been. And it was harder than it was 3 weeks ago. And now I'm bigger. And so it's also just kind of going back to the drawing board and going, okay, this is where you're at. And working out is good for you. And that's the bottom line. And so it's been interesting. So I think we talked before, we push play, but, just people in general that think that, working out is bad for women when they're pregnant, which is very silly to me.
It's crazy.
Because working out is always healthy. Always.
And especially for the baby, increases the circulation. There's so many benefits for mom and baby, and also mental health. Like, just to move, it just helps so much. I think that now that it's like since it's COVID, I think it's mostly just here in New York, but other places gyms have opened. But lifting, like, actual weights and stuff would be, for me, also really good and really beneficial. Obviously, if you're not doing it before, you don't start something new. But if you were doing it before, you want to continue, and it's the best thing you can do for yourself and your baby.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing is like I always have to remind like my community because it's called Embrace Movement, and it's been really fun to start actually because the way we do our programming is all on Instagram, and we have a public account that anyone can view and get some cool things for free as well, called Embrace Movement. But then our actual private page is just women, so that's more of like I guess a private community that like you have to like get a membership or get a subscription on our website to get into, and then we just add them from their social
What's the
media.
website?
The website is www.embracemovement. It's movement without the vowels,
Okay.
and then .com.
I'll add a
And
link here so people can see it.
Yeah, okay, cool. And so and I would love to like, kind of get more into this later, but I definitely want to give your listeners specifically a month free because just trying it is like so good for people to just figure out, is this what I want my lifestyle to be? Do I want to be able to like get access to this programming every week or whatever? But trying it, I think, is just the best way for people to just go, okay, what is best for me? And is this my style? And, is this something I can even keep up, And so it's 5 workouts a week. There's also 5 faith videos a week. So we have 40 videos of content coming out every month.
Wow, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's amazing. So you definitely.
Yeah, it's like it's developing a ton of content, but it's kind of all hours of the night going, all right, let's work until 1 a.m. because we're tired right now and the baby's coming and then we'll be very tired. So
yes. Seriously, do everything you can now and also you'll want to look back on these videos when you're pregnant and see, you'll want it. Like I'm so happy that I recorded a lot of my videos like when I was pregnant, because when your tummy gets big and then you go back to having abs and you go back to flat, you're like, I can't, like I look at my little one now and I'm like, I can't believe you were in here. Like,
right. The skin, I hope it just stretches straight back, but I don't know. I just hope so. But it's really interesting because it's like, it's held me accountable, because I'm doing the workouts. Like I'm not doing them every day. I would say that I do like 3 to 4 of them, and the rest are videos that kind of are more just like demos and tutorials and stuff that we put out for their daily programming. But so it's been a very good thing for me because I have to remind them too, it's okay to lift weights when you're pregnant, especially if you were doing it before. And then I also like even on our Instagram that we have, like we do stories, and so like I'll have a story of me like doing like holding a 35-pound weight and doing squats or doing a thruster, which is a plus a press, or I'll be jumping side to side or something, and I'll have to remind them this is not heavy for me. Like personally, I've been doing CrossFit for 11 years. Yeah. I've been squatting with weights since I was in middle school. Like, just so you guys aren't worried of my safety or that I'm being dangerous, like, I can squat, 260 pounds and This is 35. This is okay for me, my body. It's not strenuous. And I'm not also trying to brag and go, this is so easy, because it's not so easy. I'm like, I'm tired. You know what I mean? But
I'm creating a human. Hello.
Yeah, it's more just to remind them I'm safe and this baby is safe, and like I'm not going to guide you guys into doing things that are not safe.
And you have so much experience. You've worked with a lot of women I remember talking with you, I don't know, a couple of years ago, that you worked with so many different women at all sorts of different types of gyms, and you're very familiar with how this works and how it's affected your body. It's only beneficial.
Yeah, and I think people kind of look at it as like a flag, like a red flag, if it's their first baby.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, this girl doesn't know what she's doing. How dangerous is that? And you're like, no, I get it because I haven't been experienced in having a baby before. But at the same time, like I want what's best for this guy too.
And you know your body. That's, I think, the ultimate, you know your body. There was I don't know, I was probably like 37 or 38 weeks pregnant, but maybe 37. I did a little video, a breakdown, because I was doing burpees, and obviously they were very modified, but I did like a very slow-mo video of how my stomach didn't even touch the ground, or if it did, it was like just barely, because you kick your feet back, you go to your knees. And I didn't have any issues with impact things. So I was still able to bounce my feet forward and kick my feet back or do high knees or whatever. Sure. And I got so many DMs, which is why I broke down the slow-mo of the burpee. And so many women were just like, oh, I thought you were putting I'm like, no, I would never put pressure on my stomach. I would never lay on my stomach when it's like mega. I know there's a little person in there. I'm not like, I promise I am doing this for the safety of all of us.
Yeah. The slow-mo I bet really helped. Like, to get a side view too. I'm like putting my knees down and just doing like a little mini push-up. Like I still keep my hips like hinged. And so like if I kick my feet back, put my knees down and just do a push-up and then come right back up, I'm like, you know, like you're saying, grazing your tummy on the ground maybe, but most reps I'm not even going that low. And the push-up is the hardest part.
Right.
So I'm like doing a knee push-up that's 20 pounds heavier than it was before, and my arms are probably less strong than they were before because COVID has really taken away a lot of my strength and fitness of what I'm comfortable doing because I only have like a couple.
You're just working with a minimal equipment.
Minimal equipment, right? And so, you know, even just not being able to be in a gym for 6-7 months, anyone that's listening to this podcast that doesn't live in New York City, I mean, they're probably like, well, why haven't you been able to go to a gym? Because it's a different feel. COVID has affected people differently when they live different places. I mean, I have to remember, when I talk about going to church and watching church on Zoom on our daily videos for Faith Talk, I'm like, there are people all over the world that are going to church now. That is so
actually
weird.
Going to the gym, actually going to church.
Yeah, and I'm like, ours aren't open. No way.
It's so sad.
Open. And so for me, I'm like, it's almost like I have to remember, okay, they are not going to understand this. You have to explain in depth. You know, like ours was the epicenter, it seemed like, of the pandemic. New York City is a extremely populated and dense people and dense population.
Yep. Yes.
And had a lot more restraints. So it just was very interesting to remember that too.
Well, and it's so easy to forget. Like I see people on social media and they're posting their gym photos and this and that. And I'm like, I can't believe are these old videos? Are they new videos? I can't believe that people are actually back to the gym. People aren't wearing their masks. We have a gym in our building and they opened it up so every other piece of equipment's open. And it's like, a lot of older people, so there's a lot of treadmills, there's a lot of there's only one rack with one barbell with minimal actual plates to use, but they boarded it up so you can't even use that. And I'm just dying to squat some real weights with the bar, and it's been months.
Yeah, you should just ask them. You should just be like, hey, this specific movement for me is super important. If I clean it before and after, is there any way I can do it a couple times a week?
I think I might have to, because I've just been they even close off a section where they have all the free weights and they only have the lighter weights. So it only goes up to 40 pounds. And I mean, I say lighter weights for most people, that's probably heavy, but what am I going to do with 40 pounds? I can only do so many tempo squats. I can only do so many unilateral things. I want to lift.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. That's interesting. Does your husband exercise with you?
He, during my pregnancy, we did a lot of exercising together. He only started working out probably a year before we got married. He wasn't, and it's weird too, because he wasn't into fitness. He wasn't into exercising. He never played sports. So only when we were seriously dating after we were engaged did he really get into fitness. And he got into CrossFit. He's been doing it. He loves it. And now we don't really work out together because typically our time is between the baby, unless she's napping or something, but yeah, someone has to watch her. So we don't work out together. Maybe once a week we try.
Yeah, trying. I think it's important. Yeah, on Wednesdays we have different programmings each day, and on Wednesdays is a partner workout. And although some people can do partner workouts, they have a friend that can come over, they can meet someone at the gym or whatever it is. Some people are like, I don't even have access to a partner, it's not fair. But then we celebrate in the stories or whatever when someone finally gets their boyfriend to work out with them, or finally gets someone to work out with them. They're like, oh my gosh, because I always do a solo version too. So I'm like, okay, if you're solo, you'll do this. But they're like, I see all these videos of people doing them together, how fun it looks, and I just do the solo version. And then they're like, oh my gosh, first time I got to work out with my spouse or whatever it is. And sometimes I think it's interesting, the guys will be like, oh, that's a girl workout. That's a girl program. That's a girl workout. But it's you can grab a heavier weight, bro. It's not going to be easy. Let me win, just like the rest of us. It's humble yourself and try it, you know?
It's true. I think that a lot of times people don't realize that they can vary it. They can add weight. They can, you know, it doesn't have to be exactly as it's written. You could make it more challenging.
Right. And all you need is a program to guide you through that, and making sure that program is full of scales and things like that are really important. Like, for example, Pete's mom is, she's like 60, you know, she's retired, and she can exercise, like she's mobile and, you know, she's able to move, but she doesn't, if it's too hard, I mean, she would not mind me saying this. If it's too hard, she'll quit. Do you know what I mean?
Fair.
She's like, oh, I'm good. You know what I mean? And if there's not scales provided, she would get confused on what she should be doing. So she'd be like, whatever.
Yeah.
But so I always try to, like, you know, make the scales like appropriate to what she would need. And so one time I texted her, I'm like, hey, can you do high knees? And she was like, what else you got? And I'm like, jogging in place? She's like, yeah, I like that. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, you know, I use it as kind of framework for like all of them, because especially with pregnancies, some women have a totally different pregnancy than what I'm experiencing.
Right.
And so when they are 7, 8, 9 months, jogging in place is something that is the only option for me if I'm going to do cardio. Or mountain climbers look a little different. You know, I might have to put my hands on the couch and move my feet back and forth, rather than get on the floor and try to make this athletic lunge mountain climber that's not realistic. So I'm like, okay, I got to remember, you know, you got to know your audience and you know, tailor towards them so that they feel like they're getting taken care of too. So it's teaching me a ton. I mean, even coning, I'm sure you experienced it, but that was something, diastasis, where your abs separate. Basically, your guts are coming out, like, between your abs. It's just something you want to avoid. But, like, I do the most random stuff in cone. Like, I'm always hyper aware of, like, I mean, even just, like, taking, you know, something that you do normally, like getting out of bed, for granted, and being like, oh, no, I have to roll over on my side.
Forearm, press yourself up.
Instead of sitting up, you know?
I had a pelvic floor specialist on a few weeks ago, and we discussed it a little bit. So it's really interesting because it's definitely, and that, like, there's so many things you can do that you don't realize that you'll cone. Like, I stopped doing pull-ups really early because I realized that I was protruding, like, way, even after I couldn't do, I think I was probably a month and a half or 2 months after I had her, I didn't even attempt pull-ups because I knew that because it's so much abs when you're just, and you really have to be conscious of that because it could be permanent damage. So you want to make sure that you're really making yourself tight before you go into any movement.
So how did you get through the diastasis at the, you know, after childbirth to get back into doing movements without making yourself cone?
I actually took I took 1 full month off. So I had her on April 18th. And then May 18th, like, I literally 1 full month, I did nothing besides pelvic floor stuff. And not the normal pelvic floor, like everyone thinks of Kegels, but it wasn't that. That's just part of it. That's just the front part. It should be basically, because there's 4 walls in your pelvic floor. So it was working all 4 walls. There's a bunch of different breathing exercises. And I think it was really just letting my body heal and not jumping back into it too quickly. And even now, to be completely honest, I won't do like things where I'm fully extended, like plank walkouts. I can do hanging things, like I can do toes to bar, I can do cross leg, alternating, totally fine. But anything that I'm on my back or I'm in like plank position, if I look down, I can see that I cone a little tiny bit. So I just try to I do other things to strengthen my action, like the transverse abdominals, to keep myself here, rather than anything that's in the front where your diastasis would happen.
Wow. Okay, like crunches and things like that. Okay.
Like, or little crunches, like the toe reaches, because it's such a small movement. I'll do those, but it's really interesting.
Some people, like, that's all they think of when they think of abs is floor movements and planks. So, like, you kind of have to, like, help them understand that there's so much more you can do for core as well.
Yeah, definitely. And with your programming, I think that there's so many options that you could do with, because it's not just, you know, the abs, the chiseled abs that everyone pictures in their, you know, their imagination, but like it's so interesting because I would start doing a lot of like the alternating cross body toes to bar, and I could literally feel myself like shrink back down. And there was like one day that happened, like, I think it was probably 4.5 months. I couldn't fit my pants up my hips. Like they would get stuck mid thigh, like my jeans, because your hips have to expand, right? When you give birth. And it took a solid 4.5 months for your hips to shrink back down, because there, you know, like there's not very much stretch in denim, like sweatpants or leggings or spandex shorts, whatever, were easy just to pull up. But when I tried to put jeans on, I was like, holy crap, like I really, like your hips really widen, and you don't really realize it until you try to put something on that, like even now you could fit it, I'm sure. But after pregnancy, after the delivery, you're like, holy.
And no, my hips have widened some. I've always had very, very, very narrow hips. So it's definitely like a weird process for that too. It's like, oh, wait, my pelvis actually opens, but yeah, it's happening. Yeah. But like I'm a solid 8 at Lululemon. Like right now, everything in 8 fits me. Anything that's a 6 or a 4, I'm sorry, too tight for you now. Goodbye. And so like,
and then after it's going to be even more, but it will just shrink back down. It just, you know, it takes time.
Takes time. It's so weird to think about that, because it's like, you know, your workout clothes are very expensive, but like you need bigger ones because your waist is simply not the same size at all. And so I'm like getting on Facebook Marketplace and I'm like buying people's old 8s for like $20, $25 as Lululemon, so such high quality. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be wearing this for a couple months, and that's fine.
Temporary.
To, like, clothes of what you need, because I like need them to fit. I'm like doing exercises and whatever, and like on video, and I'm like, okay, if I look like freaking Muffin Top Central, it's not just about what I look like, it doesn't feel comfortable. Like I don't like wearing stuff that's too small. It makes me look ridiculous. I'm like, okay, I need some new spandex, and I need things that look like, oh, okay, so this girl's embracing this new change in her body. She's not just trying to
smush into her old sizes.
Yeah, and my boobs are huge and whatever, my back's so wide. I'm like, okay, so never thought I'd fit in an 8 ever, but I am. Maybe 10s next month, because everyone keeps telling me how much bigger I'm going to get. I'm like, okay, I'm getting ready for that. I have like one set of 10 sports bras ready.
It's so temporary. You'll be back to yourself in no time.
It is temporary. That's true.
So... And you guys are planning to stay here in the city?
We love the city. We do. We don't love COVID in the city, but who you know, there's a lot of things that you just kind of just deal with. But, you know, I love restaurants. I don't love the winter here, but I used to, you know, be a personal trainer. I used to have clients all the time. So I would just be in the city every morning, or, you know, usually like Upper East Side or Union Square area was where my clients were. But a lot of my clients, they live outside of the city and commute in. So when quarantine and COVID happened, it wasn't like, you know, if they're not willing to do Zoom or whatever, it was kind of like everything ended for me. And so that was pretty scary, honestly. And that was kind of the reason why we were here, was just, you know, my husband works close and I work here. And so we would, you know, we're going to stay here. But it's like now, obviously, like everything has changed and we're both working from home, and we're like, we don't have to stay here, but we do like it. And we have a backyard, which is nice. And our rent is pretty affordable, although we do have limited space and a 1-bedroom, but it's the city life. That's what you do here. I'm not like, oh, I have to move and have this right away. I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's do it until we can't do it anymore. So let's just keep it going. And
I agree.
You know, it's like too much change at one time for us is tough too. My husband just got a new job. We started this business, and, you know, the baby's coming, and it's like, I don't also want to be dealing with a new space. Like, I love, you know, where we live and what we're paying. I don't want to let go. Okay, we're going to totally transform everything in our lives at once. It's like, I need more time.
Just time. And he'll sleep with you for, like, we had the bassinet right next to the bed up until And I think I saw you got a crib. I don't know if you're going to put it in the room or where you're going to put it, but he'll sleep with you for a while. Like, we could probably keep her sleeping with us for a while longer because she's thankfully a pretty good sleeper. But I just built the crib, and I still haven't really found the heart to put her over there. But probably sooner than later. But that buys you at least another, 6-8 months or something.
Yeah, we have like a really big living room.
Oh,
and
so
like
perfect.
we feed our dog, so we're trying to figure that out too. We have like a big 60-pound golden doodle. He's the sweetest, and we're pumped to see him like, with the baby and how he does.
Does he know you're pregnant?
I know everyone asks that. I'm like, he's honestly not the brightest job. So I'm like, probably not. Like, he literally jumps on my lap all the time. There's no room for him. Even if I'm holding a computer, he's like, can I sit on your computer? I'm like, no, what are you thinking? He can't catch balls. He can chase balls, but he gets there and is like, and I'm like, okay, definitely is not on to this big bump being a baby. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, if he hears something outside, it's very interesting. Like, now he's started to more like gravitate towards my husband, actually, to follow him everywhere. But then when I'm sitting down and if he hears something, he runs and sits right in front of me and watches the door. And I'm like, that you didn't used to do.
That's new.
And now that I look more vulnerable, and now I feel like a damsel in distress. But, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, it's kind of fun too, because it's like, wow, he really is like protecting me, but he was not a protective golden doodle before. So he has a crate and he sleeps in there throughout the night. And so I'm like, do I want to bring the baby's crib to the living room, which would be totally fine. We'd have enough space for it.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, how does that go? Do we leave just both of them together there? And, it's like, I mean, I heard some people saying they recommend the baby is always in another room and you shush them and things like that, but not pick them up every time they cry, things like that. But then I'm like, okay, but realistically with breastfeeding, keeping the baby in the bedroom would be easier. So I don't know what we'll do, but yes, for right now, the crib is in the room, and trust me, like, it's like almost touching our bed. I'm like, oh my gosh, like our wall space is limited. Our drawers are literally, we pull them out to our bed.
Just
and I'm like, yeah, New York City is rough.
It's New York. There's so many good trade-offs that it's worth it.
Yeah, and you and I would say that, and other people that don't live here wouldn't say that, and we'd go, that's what makes us different. Woo!
That's why we're here still, through COVID and all, with babies and dogs, and
yeah,
it's part of it.
Yeah, true. Mm-hmm.
It's fun. I think that with ours, because he's a puppy, he just turned a year in like the end of May. He knew I was pregnant. Like, he would come up and put his nose on my stomach, like literally right in my belly button, and he would smell, like he knew. It was so weird. And he just recently realized that she's a person because he has a bone that he'll fetch with. And he went to her, she was laying down on the little boppy, and he dropped her bone at her feet, like for her to throw it. So he realized that she's a person, but he doesn't really know. Like, the other day, I got home, I had her in the stroller, and I walk him. So it's like, you're trying to manage both of them. I got home, I parked her, I took his leash off him. I took the trash out, and the trash is it's very close to our, like by the elevator, it's very close here. So I left the door kind of perched open, and I took the trash out. They're both in the apartment still. And I was gone maybe, 20 seconds. And I come back and he's sitting right at her stroller, like on guard, protecting her. Even normally he gets home and he goes to his water bowl and he, goes and lays down or goes to his bed or whatever. But he was just waiting because he knew I left her there, I guess. I don't know.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's very interesting because he's, slowly realizing this is a person and this is going to be his little sibling,
and that they're vulnerable. Like, they can tell too, like, this person can't protect themselves. Like, this is a vulnerable,
Totally.
I have to be gentle with it, whatever. I am excited to see kind of like our puppy, like, our dog's like only 2 years old, so not even. So it's kind of like they'll be like raised together kind of thing. Like,
It's fun.
like they'll grow up together. I can't even think about when the dog dies. Like, I can't even go there. Like, I can't, but I'm like, oh, like baby Jay will be in like middle school, and like, that's going to be the worst year ever.
Yeah.
Like, for I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't even, because it's just like, I wouldn't say our dog is our baby, but
No,
like,
but he's a kid. Like ours is definitely like he's our first kid. Like
it's so tough because it's like I'm also a really strict dog parent, so I'm very like I call myself a tiger mom. I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm like, like yes, no, we have rules in this house, but we both respect each other. I respect his freedom, he respects my boundaries. So it's kind of like a more of a companionship than a kid thing, but at the same time, it's like I raised you, and like I slept on the floor in the kitchen with you because you were potty trained, and like stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, I have to go back to that mode that I was in when he was a really small puppy, and I'm like, I was freaking exhausted. I do remember that being for months exhausted crate training, and I'm like, okay, but I was so happy because I was like finally had a job. So I was like so tired, but I had a smile on my face. Yay! Like
since you've been through that, like you went through that relatively recently, I swear to you, this is the craziest thing. My dog is more work than my kid. And I think that I don't know if it'll be the same for you. I hope, like, for your sake, it is. Like, the boy is easy. But it's truly with us, our dog is more work than our kid. It's crazy.
Wow.
And he's like, I'll send you a photo after this, but he literally stands in the window. He looks out the window, like, looking at what's going on in the street. He sees dogs. He cries. He needs to go outside. He's this. And my daughter just, she hangs out, and I know she needs to eat every 3 hours. She does it. She's easy. She hangs out. It's crazy.
It's so funny. Wow. Yeah, we do have similar lifestyles. We do.
Well, you're in for a treat. Like, seriously, you're going to love it. You're going to have so much fun. I want to know one last thing. Is there anything else you want to share? Upcoming projects,
well, you were right. 60 minutes does go by fast.
I know.
Like, wow, it is just like talking on the phone with a friend, which is really cool. Anything else I want to share? Well, we do have like a code for your viewers and your listeners. I would say about 20% of our women's community is that work out together and listen to the faith talks and comment and stuff like that. I would say about a fifth of our women either are prenatal or postpartum. So that's kind of like a fun thing to jump into, but we wanted to open that up to your audience as well. And so if you guys go to www.embracemovement.com and you'll have the links and set up for them, then if you type in a women's experience in all caps or lowercase, whichever one, so a women's experience, so that's the code to get a month free. Cool. So if they want to, do that, if they want to follow me on Instagram, it's at Ager_bomb.
I'll include the link.
My maiden name. Yeah. So Agerbomb. And, you guys can, follow me from here on out or join the fitness community or just enjoy that. Like, we're friends. Maybe I'll be back here on in the future, but I really had fun being on here. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for taking time out. I know you got a lot going on. I'm so excited to see what happens. So please keep me posted. I'm going to be following along, and hopefully the viewers will as well. I'll include all the links for them to see your personal Instagram, but also the movement one. And then also link your website. And
okay, cool.
Yes, thank you for your time. I'm happy I got to meet Pete. Thank you. And be well and stay well.
You too. All right. I'll see you later.
See you. Have a good one.